For a week after the commission of the impulse and the profane of the offense of asking for more, Oliver remained a close prisoner in the dark and solitary room to which he had been consigned by the wisdom and mercy of the bird. It appears, at first sight, not unreasonable to suppose that if he had entertained a becoming feeling of respect for the prediction of the gentleman is well waistcoat, he would have established that said individual's prophetic character, once and forever, by tying one end of his pocket handkerchief to a hook in the wall, and attaching himself to the other. To the performance of this feat, however, there was one obstacle, namely, that pocket handkerchief, being decided articles of luxury, had been, for all future times and age, removed from the nose of paupers by express order of the board, in council assembly given and pronounced under their hands and seals. There was a still greater obstacle in Oliver's youth and childness. He only cried bitterly all day, and when alone, the small knight came on, spread his little hands before his eyes to shut out the darkness, and, crouching in the corner, tried to sleep, ever and anon walking with a start and tremor, and drawing himself closer and closer to the wall, as if to feel even its cold hard surface were a protection in the gloom and loneliness which surrounded him. Let it not be supposed by the enemies of system that during the period of his solitary incarceration, Oliver was denied the benefit of exercise, the pleasure of society, or the advantage of religious consolation. Over exercise, it was nice cool weather, and he was allowed to perform his absolution every morning under the palm, in a stone yard, in the presence of Mr. Bumble, who, prevent his getting cold, and caused a tingling sensation to pervade his frame, by repeated application of the cane. As for society, he was carried every other day into the hall where the boys dined, and their sociable flock as a public warning and example, and so far from being denied the advantage of religion consolation, he was kicked into the same apartment every evening at prayer time, and there permitted to listen to and console his mind with a general supplication of the boys containing a special clause therein inserted by authority of the bird, in which they entreat to be made good, virtuous, converted, and obedient, and to be girt from the sins and vice of the Oliver twice, whom the supplication distinctly set forth to be under the exclusive patronage and protection of the powers of weakness, and an article direct from the manufactory of the very devil himself. It chanced one morning, while Oliver's affairs were in this auspicious and comfortable state, that Mr. Camfield chimney sweep, went his way down the High Street, deeply cogitating in his mind his ways and means of paying certain areas of rent, for which his landlord had become rather pressing. Mr. Camfield's most sanguine estimate of his finances could not raise them within full £5 of the desired amount, and in a species of arithmetical desperations. He was alternately cudgeling his brains and his donkey. When passing the workhouse, his eyes encountered the bill on the gate. "Whoa!" said Mr. Gamfield to the donkey. The donkey was in a state of profound abstraction, wondering, probably, whether he was destined to be regaled with a cabbage stalk or two when he had disposed of the two sacks of the suit with which the little cart was laden. So, without noticing the word of command, he jogged onward. Mr. Gamfield grew a fierce imprecation on the donkey generally, but more particularly on his ass, and running after him, bestowed a blow on his head, which would inevitably have beaten in any school but a donkey's. Then, catching hold on the bridle, he gave his jaw a sharp wrench, by way of gentle reminder that he was not his own master, and by this means turned him round. He then gave him another blow on the head, just to stun him till he came back again. Having completed this arrangement, he walked up to the gate to read the bill. The gentleman with the white waistcoat was standing at the gate with his hand behind him. After having delivered himself of some profound sentiments in the boardroom, having witnessed the little dispute between Mr. Gamfield and the donkey, he smiled jocosely when that person came up to read the bill, for he saw at once that Mr. Gamfield was exactly the sort of Master Oliver twice won. Mr. Gamfield smiled, too, as he perused the document, for £5 was just sum he had been wished for, and as to the boy with which it was encumbered, Mr. Gamfield, knowing what the dietary of the workhouse was, well knew he would be a nice small pattern, just the very thing for register stuff. So he spelled the bill out again, from beginning to end, and then, tossing his fork, kept in token of humility, across the gentleman in the white waistcoat. "This he boy, sir, what the parish wants to practice," said Mr. Gamfield. "Eh, my man," said the gentleman in the white waistcoat, with with a con with a condescending smile. "What of him? If the parish would like him to learn a right listen trade in a good, respectable, simply sweeping business, said Mr. Gamfield, "I want a apprentice, and I'm ready to take him." "Walk in," said the gentleman in the white waistcoat. Mr. Gamfield had lingered behind to give the donkey another blow on the head and another wrench on the jaw, as a caution not to run away in his absence, following the gentleman with the white waistcoat into the room where Oliver had first seen him. "It's a nasty trade," said Mr. Limbkins, when Gamfield had again stayed with his wish. "Young boys have been smart in chimneys before now," said another gentleman. "That's a cause they dump the straw, afore they lit it in the chimney to make 'em come down again," said Gamfield. That's all smoke, and no blaze. Feral smoke ain't no use at all in making a boy calm down, for it only sends him to sleep, and that's what he likes. Boys is very obstinate and very lazy, gentlemen, and here's nothing like a good hot place to make 'em come down fit around. It's human too, gentlemen, a cause, even if they stuck in the simile. Roasting their feet makes 'em struggle to extricate themselves. The gentleman is the white waistcoat appeared very much amused by this explanation, but his mirth was speedily checked by a look from Mr. Limbkins. The board then pros- the board then proceeded to conference among themselves for a few minutes, but in so low a tone that words saving expenditure. Look well in the accounts. Have a print report published. Were alone audible. This only chance to be heard, indeed, or account of their being very frequently repeated with great emphasis. At length the whisper ceased, and the members of the board, having resumed their seats and their solemnity, Mr. Limbkins said, "We have considered your, your proposition, and we don't approve of it." "Not at all," said the gentleman in the white waistcoat. "Decidedly not," added the other members. As Mr. Camfield did happen to labor under the slight imputation of having brought four boys to death already, it occurred to him that the board had, perhaps, in some unaccountable fig, take it into their heads that this extraneous circumstance ought to influence their proceedings. It was very unlike their general mode of doing business, if they had, but still, as he had no particular wish to revive the rumor, he twisted his cap in his hand and walked slowly from the table. "So you won't let me have him, gentlemen?" said Mr. Gamfield, pausing near the door. "No," replied Mike Limkins. "At least, as it's nasty business, we think you ought to take something less than the premium of offered." Mr. Gamfield's countenance brightened as, with a quick step, he returned to the table and said, "What will you give, gentlemen? Come, don't be too hard on a pure man. What will you give?" "I should say £3 was plenty," said Mr. Limbkins. "10 shillings too much," said the gentleman in the white waistcoat. "Come," said Camfield, "say £4, gentlemen. Say £4, and you have got rid of him for good and all." "There, £3 10," repeated Mr. Limbkins firmly.